Welcome everyone. Good evening to everyone here in Yale Center Beijing, as well as in Asia. And good morning to everyone in the US, as well as in the Americas. Welcome to the 2022 Yale US-China Distinguished Colloquium, which is a collaboration between the Association of Chinese Scholars and Students at Yale, the Yale Club of Beijing, the Yale School of Management Greater China Club, as well as the Yale Center Beijing. My name is Carol Lee Rafferty. I am a Yale College alumna and also Executive Director of Yale Center Beijing, Yale University's only university-wide center outside of the US. And today, I can't be more happy to be welcoming every one of you to this very important event, which actually started 12 years ago in 2010 as the Yale US-China Forum, which was a series of student-led conferences that convened thought leaders to discuss cutting-edge issues facing China and the US. And this remarkable effort is actually a culmination of Yale's 2 centuries-long history of academic exchange with China, which started with Yongwing, or Ronghong, who went to Yale College back in 1850. He was the first Chinese student to ever graduate from an American university. Today, guess what? 170 years later, there are more than a third, or 1,132 students out of more than 3,000 students, international students, on the Yale campus today. So for today, this year's theme is Revive, Rethink, and Relaunch. And I can't be happier to be welcoming a really stellar and diverse roster of distinguished alumni, faculty, and friends speakers who are going to talk about technology, geopolitics, economics, and health. Among the many distinguished speakers, I feel especially honored to welcome Siddharth Chatterjee, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, who has prepared a special address for the occasion. Pericles Lewis, Vice President for Global Strategy, Douglas Tracy Smith, Professor of Comparative Literature and Professor of English at Yale University, and Ted Snyder, former Dean and William S. Beinecke Professor of Economics and Management at the Yale School of Management, who will deliver the opening remarks. We'll have Jim Rogers later, a Yale College alumnus and a legendary investor and co-founder of the Quantum Fund, to be our keynote speaker. And Lynn Cooley, Dean of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the C.N.H. Long Professor of Genetics, and Vice Provost for Postdoctoral Affairs at Yale University, will be giving the closing remarks. Up next, I'm going to pass the microphone to Helen Swan, who is the president of the Yale Club of Beijing, and she will discuss more about the panels and the speakers. Thank you very much, and welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carol. Good evening and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome everyone here and online. First, I'd like to thank Yale Center Beijing, Association of Chinese Students and Scholars at Yale, and Yale SOM Greater China Club for co-hosting this event. During my preparation for the event, many people asked me, why do we want to host a Yale US-China summit at such a challenging time? I think the timing is indeed important. Never before has such a meeting been more relevant than today, because in a time of confusion between the 2 countries and our 2 peoples, and amidst rising protectionism and populism, it's very important to promote openness and dialogue through which we foster mutual understanding and bilateral collaborations. There are three things we should think about at such challenging time. First, how do companies react to different emerging technologies, such as AI, digital transformation, blockchain, etc.? And how do they revive their missions and executions during the technological disruption? Then, how should business leaders rethink their strategies and how do they promote global economic growth and social benefits for all? Last but not the least, the world has changed dramatically because of COVID, Ukraine war, climate crisis, and so on. We are in a totally different world today. And these circumstances, how can US and China work best together to produce the prospect of a post-COVID world order based on mutual trust and collaborations? If you are interested in these questions, let's embark on the discussion journey with our distinguished speakers. And I'd like to thank all the speakers for the generous sharing of their insights. I'd also like to thank the audience for participation and pre-collected questions. It's our hope that after this summit, you can put what you learned to use, making your business more successful or helping make the world a better place. Thank you. Now let's get started our journey. First, let's welcome Sid to his greetings.
Greetings. My name is Siddharth Chatterjee, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in China. I want to thank the Yale Club of Beijing, the Yale Center Beijing, the Association of Chinese Students and Scholars at Yale, and the Yale School of Management Greater China Club for the invitation to address the 2022 Yale US-China Distinguished Colloquium. The Greater Yale community, both in China and in the United States of America, are members of one of the most prestigious institutions of higher education in the world. Academia is an important sector of society that the United Nations and China works with towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, our blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. Addressing challenges that threaten global progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, conflicts, and inequalities, requires collaboration from all stakeholders and the entire community of nations, including the United States and China. As key member states of the United Nations system, the family, China and the US have an important role in upholding the values of peace and security, development, human rights by following the principles of the United Nations Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights while implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The United Nations and China has embarked on a new cycle of cooperation with the government of China in the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for 2021 to 2025. This cooperation framework will help China respond to new opportunities and challenges presented in the three key priority areas, namely people and prosperity, second, planet, and third, partnerships. Through the implementation period of the cooperation framework, my highest priority is for the United Nations and China to support sharing of China's experiences, expertise, and resources and bring to bear these lessons for the benefit of the developing world, especially Africa, while ensuring alignment to all relevant international norms and standards. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a turbulent global landscape, with the world now experiencing the highest number of violent conflicts since the end of the Second World War in 1945. The 2030 Agenda reminds us there is no peace without sustainable development and no sustainable development without peace and justice or without respect for human rights. In this context, the Sino-US relationship is perhaps the most consequential bilateral relationship in the 21st century. My boss, the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has said, and I quote, "It is essential to address the problems of vaccination, the problems of climate change, and the many other global challenges that cannot be solved without constructive relations." End of quote. Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in the remaining years of this decade of action requires an all-of-society approach and renewed efforts from the private sector, academia, young people on both sides. Young people are entering the workforce should consider how they can work to address these interconnected challenges by engaging in an evolved and inclusive multilateral approach. Just as youth engagement is critical to achieving the 2030 Agenda, actions to be taken by the young generation will also be key to the future of Sino-US relations. With the full normalization of diplomatic relations came the state visit of the former leader Deng Xiaoping to the United States of America, with the then President Jimmy Carter in early 1979 opening the door to scientific, technological, cultural, and educational exchanges. A new generation of students and scholars began studies in one another's countries, exchanges that continue to this day to build trust, learn from each other, enhance friendships, and promote mutual understanding between the people of China and the United States of America. In this spirit, as part of a Chinese delegation in 1985, a young Chinese official visited Muscatine, Iowa State, to study US agriculture, staying in the home of an American family, creating lasting impression upon him and in his view of the two countries. Reuniting 28 years later, President Xi Jinping visited this family and explained his return by saying, and I quote, "To me, you are America," end of quote. To the young people in the room, you too are an important bridge between these two powers, and I urge you to continue directing your efforts towards a more peaceful, sustainable future. I once again express my regards to the Yale community and wish you all a very, very successful event. Thank you very much.
It's my honor to introduce our 6 distinguished speakers. First, Sai Yishan, Managing Director and Head of China Harbor West Partners. Gary Chad, Founder and Managing Partner, Sharp Houseware Partners.
Hello, everyone.
And Sean Huang, CEO of Taikang Investment. Tao Ning, President and Partner, Innovation Ventures.
Hello, everyone.
Also, online we have Shirley Yang, Founder and Managing Partner, Dragon Rise Capital. Our panel moderator, Martin Ma, Founder and CEO of Happy Universe.
We actually have a very different people from online and offline, so it's a very interesting session from different continents at a very different time, even from 1 month ago, to talk about China and the US and the globalization. So I think it's we heard a lot from Jim Rogers on his view on globalization. So I hope we can get more from our speakers and panelists tonight as well. So I have a few questions from our audience and myself. So maybe I will just start from some questions for all the panels to start. What's your view on the if we have a post-COVID situation in the world, economically and socially?
I think we should start from Shirley.
Maybe we should start from Shirley.
Shirley is in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. And to answer your first question, I would say at the best it's quite challenging. Still, in terms of the prospect, the post-COVID political and economic situation, and especially sitting where I am, and which is precisely the reason that prevents me from going to Beijing to join the party, meet with all of you guys. I would love to see you in person. I think at a personal level, I remain cautiously optimistic for the long run, which is quite cliche for a long-term investor like myself. But I think that fits the situation quite well. I think in China in particular, I think since most of the panelists today are in the investment industry, I would say a lot to look for, but a lot more to challenging us. I think I will leave it there for now and give the other distinguished panelists an opportunity to expand on the same topic.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley. Maybe we should start from Sean. Do you want to continue?
Okay. Thank you for having me today here. So I think the COVID definitely has a lot of pressure on the economy. We know the economy is driven by three factors: investment, demand, and export. Investment, I think definitely the government spending has been constrained by their activities to control the pandemic. So the lack of resources or lack of leverage. And also the private investment appetite and confidence also constrained. And we do a lot of investment across different sectors. Like we have seen the consumption also slowed down. We have seen recently the investment in consumer sector also be slowing down. So I think in the middle term or in the short term, definitely the economy is under pressure. But we think the government will take some actions to stimulate the economy. But on the positive side, I think there are also some good news. Like for example, the under COVID situation in the past 2 or 3 years, digitalization is a good trend. People always say like in the past 2 or 3 years, the economy or in our sector like healthcare, digital healthcare is starting to grow very quickly. We have seen the opportunities like people are very used to doing business or communicate online. So another perspective is for the healthcare technology, like Dachin and I, we're both working in that area. Like there are a lot of creativity and breakthrough in the healthcare technology, for example, the MRI, right? And also a lot of opportunities in IVD area. So yeah, no one knows when the pandemic will be end, but we'll see people and also the company are getting used to that and how to facing that challenging. Well, I'm cautiously positive in the middle term, but in the short term, definitely some challenges.
Sally, thank you.
Yeah, so I think, I agree with Sean. I think the pandemic changed the world in many ways and probably differently in different society. On the digital economy side, I think it's global impact in how goods and services move around and how we work and how we live has been fundamentally changed. So after that, maybe the physical offices is on the trend to no longer be as important as before, which is already happening in the US at least. And there are many ways that the new technologies could accelerate implementation, like such as in the quarantine areas, they're already using driverless vans to deliver goods. Even when I was in quarantine hotel once, the robotic service little tools came to send me my Starbucks, which was quite an interesting experience. So I think that did accelerate how technology is used in our daily life. Socially, I think the impact could be deeper. For example, I think in the US we hear about the Great Resignation. Interestingly, a lot of people after the pandemic decide they don't want to work. They don't want to pursue success or money, the old goals they set up. They think maybe being healthy, still live, and enjoy the moment is more important. While here we may experience severe unemployment, at least during the pandemic, and may take time to recover given the supply chain disruption, the inability to travel. So it may take different forms. I think on personal level, mental health issue could have long and deep impact. And I think that's something also we should be aware. And for children as well, for a few years without physical learning, which I believe is critical for youth. How do we recover and get them back on track? And I hope there are more attention around emotional health and how to get people back on track to live a normal life, to get used to interacting with people the normal way. So something we don't have control, we don't know when this all will end, but I think understanding this could happen is important, and adjusting our own assumption is important so that we could slowly go back to a new kind of normal for all of us.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I totally agree with my other friends in their summary that to some degree we need to be cautiously optimistic. I cannot speak for the macroeconomic situation in China because there are so many uncertainties that's beyond market economy. People who understand what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, okay? And for my specific sector, because Sally and I, Shirley and I, last time we had a lot of fun in one of the roundtables like this. We were touching on some very interesting topics. And unfortunately, some of the topics became reality now. I'm a specialist, a student of the healthcare investment field. Our field is a little bit different than the other sectors in the economy. We could see post-epidemic, we could see some immediate rebound in this subsector. This is because people already realized in the lockdown situation, many people need to go to hospitals. In China, each year, 4 million people will get cancers, different types of cancers. Some urgent, more urgent, some less urgent. But each month, you have about 350,000 people getting cancers. These people, they won't postpone their process or their cancer progress because of epidemic. Whoever gets cancer only get delayed in diagnosis, in treatment. Once the lockdown and semi-lockdown situation in major cities get eased, these people need to go to hospitals urgently. Okay, it's a huge burden on society, and many people just don't realize it. Okay, there are many other diseases besides COVID-19. Okay, if you postpone cancer diagnosis for 3 months, the consequences for many of these patients can be quite severe. And we felt that, and if in a freer market, you could see some immediate rebound in this subsector. And unfortunately, some of my colleagues in this sector also profited quite handsomely in this epidemic. And even some of our portfolio companies get pretty well rewarded by their previous effort in technology investments, in their innovation in certain disease treatment. So that's the special situation for the healthcare sector. We don't like it, but we have to, deal with the situation. And because many of our companies produce these diagnostic testing kits, or the raw materials producing these IVD testing kits. And after post the epidemic, these will drop, but the vaccine industry, and especially as Sean said, the mRNA subsector will experience quite significant growth, even post-epidemic. But for other less urgent areas in healthcare, the rebound could be, there are some uncertainties there too. In China, the regulatory environment is changing almost weekly, and we have to wait and see. This healthcare industry is a heavily regulated sector.
Thank you.
As Innovation Ventures is a tech VC that we invest into the early stage of the technical startups. And we noticed that the COVID-19 or the past 2 years impact to the tech startups, I think I want to talk about some positive or good news impact. As the three speakers said, the digitalization's penetration is faster. Some people said that they saved about 10 years. So it's a good news for the startups, because when we invest into them, the biggest challenge for them is to find the customers. A lot of customers, especially the corporation, they're very hesitant to invest into the high tech. But now, during the 2 years, they know that, they realize that they need the high tech. Like Sally said, the robots in the quantum hotel. Like in the past, only a very few hotels just bought a few of them as a demonstration. They see that, they feel that their hotel is high tech. But now, the robots have the real function. So it's a very good news for the startups of the technical. So I want to talk this, not only beside the challenge, it also have the good news.
Thank you. I think we all start from the harsh reality we are facing. So which I think is probably the most difficult panel discussion we had in the center in the past few years, because everyone talk about some downside and upside. But this time it seems we have more downside. But still, we are in the tech and innovation industry. So suppose we should give people some hope. So I think the next question I want to ask each panelist to talk about is, what's your view about tech and innovation in China and globally? What are the trends and what are the area of interest you want to look more deeply, and maybe people here can get some insight from you guys, the tech and innovation trend. So let's start with Shirley again, okay? Since you haven't talked too much in the past questions.
I wanted to give my friends more opportunity to talk. And I think that was a great question at any point of time. I think, as Sally and I, were chatting a little bit, the past week in terms of how we can, better handle some potential tough questions. Knowing it's a tough time we're going through here. And one of the things that she said and inspired me was, both she and I, although I'm still older than she is, we consider ourselves old-timers who have survived quite a few economic cycles, both in the US, in Hong Kong, and in China. So all the investment opportunities and trends, if you, just like risk and rewards, they have to be analyzed and looked at in cycles. There's no black and white say, it's going to be great tomorrow or great next year, and it's going to be terrible the year after. No one can tell you that. And there's so much unexpected events, so much disruptions in our forecasts, not only from politicians but also from economists. Not to mention us as we're more micro, practitioners as investors. So I will, couch that by saying that I would think that there's no one can stop the innovation trend globally. Anything that's going to disrupt this process, disrupt human beings or humankind's ability to innovate, ability to think beyond or outside the box, and to create a better future, to create better medicine, better tech, better life for themselves. I think that in the longer run, I think I have a lot of conviction in that. But then also back to where we are as micro investors, because we do as Dating and Sean said, they are specialists in healthcare, sectors, and then I'm more a tech generalist. And for those who did not, listen to our last panel, as Sachin said, we had so much fun, but we ended on a more positive note. I think this one seems to be a lot more sober. I think in the near term, we have to be very realistic about how to manage the risk for ourselves, for your investors, for your LPs, and for the corporates, or even just your individual bosses you're working for. And that falls on the individual industries. As Tao-Ning pointed out, for certain early stage techs, like robotics and even some digital products or AI products in particular, the market adoption can be hard to come by, but during the last 2 years, in fact, there has been accelerated, acceptance of the products and the services, which, happen to be, helping some of the entrepreneurs. But then I want to say though, that's very few and in between in terms of opportunities. Majority of the market and the economy is suffering. So since the topic of today's panel is revive, and what's the other one? Relive. I think the revival of the economy, I think that near to midterm can be challenging for us who are investing in this market. But as I said, longer term, I never underestimate we as the Chinese people, our ingenuity and our hard working and our ability to create. I want to give the floor to other friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Maybe Tony, you can talk about something.
I think it's during this period, especially from the Chinese government's policies implementation to the hardcore technology, you can see that is good news for the startups if they remain focused on the technology side. And when we look at the new trend, when we focus on the three industries, one is we call it AI implication or application to the different sectors, like AI in manufacturing, AI in agriculture, or AI in the airspace. This is one big sector. And another one is the healthcare. But I leave the healthcare sector to these two speakers because we are the new investor in this area. The third one is the application to the enterprise. And this is a traditional technology investment sector. But during these past 2 years, more and more enterprise, including the government, have the strong intention to use the digital platform, whatever on their supply or purchase, or to improve their productivities.
Yeah, thank you. Those areas has been very hot in a few years.
But then in the past 2 years, the valuation becomes a little realistic.
Okay, yeah. So, any other comments from Sally, from Sean, from Darren on this topic?
So maybe some more on the positive note. As I was a technology banker for 15, 16 years in the US and in Asia before becoming LP, investing venture firms in China. So I have seen some cycles and changes, and technology and innovation has been a key enabler for Western economy, Western countries to grow, and it clearly has played a major role in China. I think the decoupling or deglobalization, in a way, actually helped push China to really start its stage of true innovation and true technological advancement, as compared to the past decades. We are probably leveraging the globally available technology to apply to large market in China. But the real technology creation, innovation has not truly taken place yet, or just in the beginning stage. And now it did get the attention from the regulators, from the entrepreneurs, and from capital that it must happen now. And China is in a better place now compared to decades ago. Now we have the largest group of engineers. We have a group of well-experienced entrepreneurs, and we have many large companies have people who are leaving to start their next thing. And we also have domestic capital to people like Sean's firm, they invest in local companies and managers. So China is at a stage, it has its own ecosystem to have more focused advancement in technology innovation. And there are many sectors within technology, China is still behind. Although China is the largest digital economy, empowered by the large consumer base and middle class, although it has lots of data that can power the AI and big data, but on the enterprise software front, we're still behind. And on the deep tech semiconductor automation front, there's still a lot to catch up, and those takes years, could be decades, for China truly to get up to speed. And there may not be things you can just borrow or copy anymore. So I think those are the positive catalysts that could push China to truly start its journey to be a true leader in global technology and innovation, and all the recipes are there. And I think it's time to enter the next stage, and that side I think is only positive.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably I would add, from our perspective, for the investment to look into the trends. So we have seen there are 3 significant trends in the middle or longer terms. One is demographic change. I'm from the insurance company. Taikang Insurance is focused on the life insurance. We're always talking about the population aging, or we are entering into the age of longevity. That will make a lot of change. One is and also at the same time, the birth rate is lower. So in that case, the labor is less, and labor cost is rising. And also we have much more aged people need to take care. So in that case, we have probably we need to focus on technology to improve the efficiency. So because we have more expensive labor, and also there are more kind of aged people and living longer. If people living longer, they have more diseases happened. So, and also they need more money to support them after retirement. So in that case, we have seen there are also a lot of opportunities for healthcare to under this kind of demographic change. This is one longer-term trend. The second one is just as Sally said. So we have seen like a geopolitical change, in particular the tension between the U.S. and China, the decouple of the technology and supply chain globally. So in that case, Chinese government has been focusing on how to build up the kind of self-independence or self-controllable technology that provide opportunities for startup companies in China as local companies to develop the real technology and to enter into the tier 1 supply chain. We have seen a lot of opportunities in that sectors, like the semiconductors, the AIs, so the local company have more opportunities now. And the third trend, that would be the kind of, we call that decarbonization trend. People globally have a consensus to reach the kind of carbon neutral situation. Like in China, they have 30-60 targets. In 2030, we'll reach a peak emission. In 2060, we'll reach like a carbon neutral. In that big backdrop, so there are a lot of opportunities for the carbon decarbonization technology, because this is China's strength. In the past, the energy is based on fossil fuel. This is resources based. China don't have much resources in a kind of that perspective. But China is very strong in manufacturing. For the clean tech is largely built on manufacturing, like solar, wind. They are built on kind of equipment manufacturing capability. And also the battery are built on the chemical manufacturings. Those are all China's strengths. So in the next maybe several decades, the decarbonization will provide a lot of opportunities both from the energy generation side and also the user side. For example, the electric cars and the electric car value chain. So there are a lot of opportunities driven by those three longer-term trends. We have seen a lot of opportunities. So probably this is opportunities for like technology innovation in China.
Thank you.
Well, as the last person, initially I didn't want to say too much on this topic, but since most of my friends are quite optimistic, I have to strike a different tone, unfortunately. In the healthcare industry, I don't think 那个厉害了我的国在这个领域 is nonsense, garbage. For those people who understand me, for very the harsh reality is that the most advanced healthcare technologies in China are now most of them are provided by foreign companies, foreign countries. And yeah, we can all, shout, we will fill the vacuum, and we can, opportunities. But in reality, it's really hard. Just give you one example, okay? During the COVID-19 epidemic, one of the quite commonly used criteria is CT scans to identify signs of your lung infection. Most of the high-end CTs are sold by foreign companies. Even worse, even the mid-range or slightly lower range CTs, the key components are imported. 99% of the X-ray bulbs, X-ray sources, light sources in the cities are important. If you want to produce it, there are only a couple of Chinese companies can produce mid to lower range X-ray sources for the CT machines. You know, without any emphasis, and you can realize, you know, how harsh the situation is. And if you want to produce it, it requires years of knowledge in this field. Some of the key components of these X-ray sources are important. Only a few companies in Europe, in Japan, or in the US can produce them. Okay? We are in this field. We know how difficult it is. One X-ray source costs about 300K to 1.5 million RMB per piece. In China, we can only produce those lower end to 800K, that range of products, and with very limited numbers. The key components of those light tubes are important, and it's not something that you say, wow, it's such a good opportunity. It's hard. It's really hard. We talk about a lot of the medicines we use in China. Most of you are of higher income in the society. For us, who we know in this field, 80% of the products used in China are still, products that were used 10, 15, 20 years ago in the Western countries. And it's not something that we're proud of, and we want to change that. They are providing a lot of opportunities. But if you don't have a good system, you cannot foster the innovation that can fill that void. And in the short run, we already have a lot of talents coming from other countries and a lot of technology bases, foundations to provide some of the mid to lower level products. But for the most advanced products, we do still need to rely on cross-border interactions, knowledge transfers, and these things. In the longer run, if we really decouple, the situation could be even worse. And just within healthcare technology alone, the situation may not be that rosy, because most of these technology advances rely on biology research, biochemistry, materials, computer science, physics, you name it. And we know if you get to the bottom of it, we still have a long way to catch up. Without some system in place to guarantee free exchange of ideas, if you don't listen to the experts, and you are bound to lag behind. And so for short term to midterm, maybe 5 years, 10 years, I'm still cautiously optimistic. We can make progress. But for the longer run, in the healthcare industry, the progress in the outside world is very fast. If you don't pay attention to it, you will slip behind again. So that's my cautionary word for this field, at least.
Thank you. Thank you for the honest sharing from all of our panelists. I think first thing I learned at Yale economic class is comparative advantage. Right. So you produce something you are very good at, and you exchange with others. Yeah. And that shaped our, in the past 30 to 20 years, I think, China's fast growth benefit from this globalization.
Right.
So I asked a question, Jim Rogers, on this topic. What's the future of globalization? I think Derek just mentioned that, okay, for some reason we have some setbacks. Like Jim Rogers also mentioned, we have setbacks in the States, in Germany, in Japan in the past. It all happened in the history. Unfortunately, people don't learn from the history. But sometimes it may happen and it may go as unnoticed, because if everyone try to split or try to close up with the word, then people will realize it very quickly, maybe in 2 years, in 1 to 2 years. So if we look forward for maybe 2 years from now, what are the opportunities for collaboration in your field for Chinese entrepreneur investors and the world? I don't know who wants to start, maybe from Hang Ying.
You know, when you use the cooperation words, I recently learned another word. It's called access. In the past 20 years, we talked about a lot of cooperation. We take the cooperation as granted. We can cooperate with every country, with every people. But I think that from now on, things will be changed dramatically. There will be maybe in 2 or 10 years, we have less cooperation. And then we need to think about, without cooperation, can we have access? Your access to the talents, your access to the patent, your access to the resource. Because if we really have the decon, or we really have no globalization, we just read the paper, we just watch the TV or radio, you know, you cannot get the inside information. All the inside information is belong to the face-to-face talk, from the friendship, from your labs collaboration, or from your classmates or your friends. So I maybe from this side, I'm a little negative from 2 or 3 years. I do worry about that. If we don't have so many collaboration, if we don't have so many overseas students, whatever is we send out or whatever is they send it in, we will be behind the technology quickly.
Other panelists?
Yeah,
Sure,
okay.
Shirley. Yeah, Shirley.
I think in terms of opportunities, right, there is plenty, but the question today facing us, or you know, challenges we're faced with, is how do you utilize that technology? How do you create or foster a politically, economically amicable environment so that you can actually take advantage of those access and collaborative opportunities, right? Just to pick up a few very obvious areas, environmental science, right? We all know, you know, we are facing with a global carbon neutrality target. For other countries, it's 2035, I believe. China is 10 years, you know, later. It's 2045 to become carbon neutral. And then, you know, there's healthcare, as Dutching elaborates so well, you know, in terms of pros and cons, and I wouldn't expand on that. And then there is a agricultural science. You know, people might start starving like the people in Shanghai. Yeah. And, you know, you will want to work on that, you know, which should be a global effort with all the scientists, you know, who are expertly in the field. And also, you will want to continue to attract talents back to the country. I think that we have done that very well in the last decade or two, but I doubt, you know, this is going to continue for the next few years. In fact, we might see a backlash or exodus of some talents, which is already happening in the last month. So I would think there are indeed a lot area where, you know, there are opportunities, not just intelligent manufacturing, math system, AI in particular. We got a lot of talents back from the US. But developing this thing, on our own, probably will push us back another decade also if we decide to really decouple. But then, unfortunately, this may not be, for us to decide. It might be just helpful to put it out there, since we have some audience who might be curious about what we're thinking, based on our experience. So that will be my 2 cents. Thank you all.
Thank you. Maybe Sean?
Yeah, probably from my perspective, the cooperation between China and US, I think is definitely based on assumption we can rebuild our trust. Professor Graham Allison's talking about the Thucydides trip. He studied in the last, there are 16 opportunities, the rising power, how to replace the existing power, the entropy and into the peace. But I think in the past 4 decades, China is growing so quickly. There's some illusion from both sides. For China's side, we think we are so powerful, we're growing so quickly. But we are not, just as Dachin said. We are not in terms of technology, in terms of talent. We're just big, not strong. And from US perspective, they think China is growing so quickly, it definitely will be a threat. But we are not. We are not a threat because China, in the last 3,000 years, our culture is based on Confucians, peaceful culture. We always rise peacefully. But people don't know that because based on the past experience, the rising power definitely, in most cases, were ending into a war. So I think there's some illusion or misunderstanding from both sides. It's very important. I think this conference is very good. At least people sitting together to exchange their views. At least we as a kind of educated overseas or people who are interested to do this conversation, it's very important to understand both perspectives. So I think for the cooperation in technology, definitely we need to rebuild our trust between people, between the government, and between the companies across the ocean.
Thank you. That's very important. Sally and Darren, do you want to add something?
No, maybe I think start somewhere first, right? We may not see the cross-border everything, collaboration and cooperation, but we should find areas that we have common ground, China and US, in particular areas that humanity are facing together, such as climate change. I think this is at least one of the areas we all have a common opponent or threat facing humanity. That could also happen sooner than people expected, and how to collaborate, optimizing our resources together to tackle the upcoming bigger crisis to humanities, I think is something I believe the countries could agree upon, and starts somewhere first to build trust and build the understanding of the world will be better with cooperation. I think then we can go from there, and also. One single country cannot tackle this climate change issue, this global problem, and one single country cannot tackle the next, more severe pandemic. So I think understanding these challenges, to start working together in these areas that's more life-threatening probably to humanity as a whole is a critical point for we all to realize.
Thank you.
I'll just add one example to Sally's comment. The healthcare, I sounded very some gloomy, alarming words for technology advances in the long run. If we really decouple from the outside world, but actually for the healthcare sector, it's easier to interact with the other countries. That's probably the area that would be least, or affected by political forces. You know, the physicians, the doctors, when they exchange treatment ideas, I don't think they will have a lot of political thinking behind their exchanges. And we do see that, that kind of exchanges among our biotech companies. And, you know, yes, we start, as Sally mentioned, we start from areas that rely on, you know, very deep mutual benefits in terms of people's health, environment, and these relatively easier fields, and start from there, and to rebuild the trust across the different sides.
Thank you. I think to summarize, like we have to start somewhere to rebuild the trust and to get access. So before even collaborate, but believing that when we share some, we still share a lot of common value with the world. And Chinese people are smart and working very hard. So I think there are many things we can still collaborate once the situation changed. So another topic we want to talk about is, since most of our panelists are in the investment world, I read the news for the first quarter of China's VCP industry. The foreign VCs and PEs invest in the first quarter in 2020 dropped 70%. And also the financing of those VCPs from the world, from the foreign LPs, also dropped about 60%. And we all know this is a globalized market. China will probably still the fastest growth market economy in the world in this year. So what's your view about foreign investment in China for the next few years? Maybe from Sally?
So I'm global investor.
Everyone is looking at us. Everyone is looking at us.
We know.
Yeah, so actually I recall seeing somewhere Professor Rob Siller about 10 years ago, I think he commented one of the biggest risks in China. Actually, I thought he was going to say something else. But he said is that Chinese people have not seen a real recession.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually think there are other things that are bigger risks. but that's actually true. If we look at some of the prior cycles, for example, the tech bubble, that back in the 2000, 2002, and I personally experienced, I was working in the Silicon Valley, and that's really distant from China. China didn't really have a tech industry there to fall from. Right, so that's the tech cycle in the US, and people there experience that. And then the last biggest one is the global financial crisis, which is actually really mostly happening at the capital level and the financial system. And China, in a way, I think reasonably well managed, so it's somewhat insulated from the damage or the downfall of the Western financial system. So that was also quite distant to the investors were entrepreneurs in China. And the China's economy wasn't that big, and China's tech industry wasn't big at all. And this time, I think a number of things happened at the same time. One is the technology cycle in China after the past decades, when we have built some of the largest global companies like the BATs, like the TMDs, global big companies. They're still mostly the consumer internet ecosystem. And that, I wouldn't say it come to an end, but the growth is no longer accelerating, or if not contracting. So what's next? What's the next big wave? So we're kind of in that stage of transition to the next technology cycle. So that's one cycle. And then you have the capital market cycle. globally also, US is also facing the inflation challenges. And also there's probably a little too much, too soon, capital pouring into the China market. So that kind of putting on the hold is not unusual historically. When you have too much capital, you take a stop. So that's also one of the cycle, and that also coupled with the more intense policy changes in the past year by the regulators that also caused a lot of volatility and uncertainty to capital, to global capital, who want to kind of take a stop to understand what's really going on. So that's also, to some extent, intuitive. And then, unfortunately, we have another cycle going on, the geopolitical unexpected event happening. So all of a sudden, all three things are happening, and this time is really close to China. It's too close to China. And also, average Chinese or entrepreneurs or VCs, they have more to lose than any of the prior time. If you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. And you have to drop somewhere, right? To drop 70%. So in a way, we may be seeing the real cycle for the first time, which has happened many times historically. I haven't lived as long as Mr. Rogers to have that wisdom, but for him, this may be just another 尘埃, 或者一个小石子, a little stone, a little bump on the road. But to us, it's huge because it's happening to everyone. We feel it, right? So that is more impactful to some extent. I think from global investor perspective, global flow of capital is good for asset allocation because diversification is helpful to mitigate risks, to help with the return to a certain extent. So just from their own business perspective, it will come back at some point if it's beneficial to them. And China is large enough economy, too big to ignore, or at least they need to keep track and understand when and how much to come back. So that part, historically, it always happened. There are always cycles, and cycles always have ups and downs. I think what may change or needs to change is from people actually living in this ecosystem to rethink after this first time real experience of crisis, what they need to change facing a changing world. So first is assumption. Because the world has changed, we can't continue to use the same assumption. For example, I used to believe the world would be better. Because in my limited lifespan, the world has been better.
Right.
So if I adjust that assumption, why do I believe the world will be better, right? If I adjust that assumption, the world is not too bad, right? If I think maybe the next couple of years, or could be 10 years, could be just volatile, and this is more livable, right? So that's one assumption. And two is how your view of what is success. I think a lot of people may rethink given some of the changes to the public figures and the celebrities and the fall of many who used to be role models, right? So what do I really want, right? What do each of us really want? I think it's helpful when you're too busy chasing something, you forget about yourself, right? So give us all a chance to look inside who I am, where I want to be, and resettle on its own path, on your path. I like to talk about life, my theory of 120 years, right? If I've been talking about it here before in prior panels, right? So if
many of you may know,
yeah.
so Sally is a good psychological.
I'm a believer. I believe I will live to 120. Your choice. How long you want to live, right?
So we still believe the world will be better.
So if you live 120 versus 80, how you plan your life, right? If you live 120 years, this past 3 years, it's long, but it's short, right? You can still have a new career, a new venture, a new startup, a whole new life, you know, a new boyfriend, girlfriend, and a lot of, you know, lots of time ahead of you, right? So I think it gives us a chance to pause and say, okay, the world I believe in, I'm chasing for every day, all of a sudden, you know, it stopped. Who knows, it could be better after all this, right? You find your true love in life. I'm not just saying person, your true passion in life, and you may take a new journey, and you have a longer time if you change your assumption, right? So I think, you know, maybe we should change our own assumption. And also in investment, right? Why you just have to build $1 billion company in 3 years? It's unreal, right? In the Western world, venture actually fund we invest is actually 10-year plus 4-year cycle. Because true innovation, true venture, it takes a long time. For some reason, we were able to accelerate that pace, mostly because consumer internet in China made it possible. You can build $1 billion company, $10 billion company in 3 years, in 5 years. But that may not be the case in many other fields. So we should have more patience. If you truly are passionate about this technology or what you're doing, be more patient. Take a longer time horizon. Change your time and space perspectives. Then you have a longer time goal. You can deal with the near-term challenges. So this next year may be tough. The next 2 or 3 years may be tough. But if you are persistent, you have a goal, and you continue to work towards it, it's still possible. So I think it helps us to think a lot of different things in addition to, you know, investment in China, this quarter is done, right? But it could bring a lot of great stuff in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years because of this sort of down cycle. So I think it's all about what time span you look at. That's why Mr. Rogers continues to be bullish and encourage everybody to learn Chinese. I think that the truth is, the 真理 is, at least you need to learn Chinese. This cannot be wrong, right, in the long term, right? And 2 is, China is just so important. That cannot be false either, right?
Yeah. So now we know what's in the mind of foreign LPs. So Shirley, I want to hear your view. Maybe you can talk about some view from from your perspective.
I think we'll see slowing down of foreign capital, you know, just empirically. In fact, that even though I didn't get a chance to read your questions with today's panel, I happen to have spoken to a number of friends since they, you know, they're scattered around the world, but for Asia investors, they're mostly in Hong Kong and Singapore. And in the last months, a lot of my friends moved from Shanghai to Singapore. They just pick up their bags. And so I think a stable political economic environment is crucial to keep the capital, you know, coming in. And I think that until about maybe 5 years ago, a lot of us, probably even the policymakers, think that we're so wealthy, we're such a wealthy nation now, you know, we have a robust middle class, and we have more money than, you know, the good companies you can invest in. People are competing at price level, you know, it's with, you know, insane valuations. And some of us probably lost half their share, if most of it. But this has kind of come to a, you know, halting stop, I think, in the last few months. So I do think that I will be very cautious if I'm looking at, you know, foreign capital inflow. And to give a good example, 2 of my hedge funds friends called me over the weekend. And one of them is one of the largest listed ones. He runs China. He just came back from a meeting in Singapore, arrived in Hong Kong, called me up and said, how are you doing? So I asked him, I said, okay, so what's the new strategy for China investing? He said, we'll be very cautious because they invested heavily in real estate, which you will know what's happening now. And then second person called me after seeing, reached out to me, you know, almost close to starving from vegetables. And so he's from Shanghai. He works for one of the largest European hedge funds based in London, but he just moved to Singapore. So he told me that their internal strategy is they think the near term China assets are not investable. So these are the hedge fund guys. And in the meantime, just to give it the balance, for the sake of tonight's discussion, I reached out to one of the largest asset managers in New York. This friend of mine is the head of Asia investment strategy. So we had a chat last night, and I think that they are, I would say, at the most neutral on China near term because they just obtained some new licenses. They can potentially raise some RMB. So instead of putting their U.S. investors' money in, they decided they'll play around with our local people's money, which is pretty smart, I think. Then I spoke to one of the largest European asset managers. I would name him. He's a dear friend. He's been managing Greater China for literally the largest European, asset management company. And I think that he, on the other hand, actually is a wait and see attitude. So it's actually interesting to see the pure buy-side people. I think they're more mild in nature and longer term in terms of their funds. While the hedge fund guys, you all know, are shorter than us, right? We are mostly doing primary market in venture capital. So it's very interesting. But then altogether, I do think, including myself, we've been investing the last few years more on the RMB side. We pretty much stopped doing US dollar investing for the reasons you all know. All the China stocks have been beaten, mostly, if not to earth. It's close to there. A friend of mine, actually two of my friends recently migrated to Singapore because his company valuation lost 80%, in value, and he was quite frustrated. And I hope he comes back soon. In fact, while we are on the topic, a friend of mine sent me a message from Fang Xinghai, CSLC's vice chairman, who just spoke today at Boao. People asked him about foreign capital, and his reply is, sooner or later they will return. And then in my WeChat group, it was the gentleman who runs the entire UBS asset management. So he just, he said, sooner or later is a good way to put it. So I think on that note, I probably, I would say just took a small group of people's temperature, but they happen to run some of the biggest amount of monies in the world.
Thank you. It's very insightful. So what I heard, some people are starving, so they have to leave, like a hedge fund manager.
Even me.
Oh, okay.
I have been fed by all my friends.
Okay.
Because I don't starve. My brothers have been locked down for the last 3 months.
Okay. Yeah. That's something should be fixed soon, right? Because that's something can happen in short term, but in longer term investors, wait and see, right? So that's probably the attitude. Other speakers? Darren?
No, thank you.
I may want to add one quote from Kai-Fu Lee. He is currently in the US to do the fundraising, and he spoke to
That's a great timing.
Thank you. It's a tough job now. He
I would love to hear his speeches.
Okay. He talked to.
And get coffee for us, so that we know how to talk to people like Sally.
He talked to the foreign, especially the U.S. investors. He said, now this is the best time to invest into China, which is 2 reasons. If you have invested into China before, now in the past the price was pretty high. Now is a good timing to get a good deal with a fair price. If you never invested into China before, now this is even a great time to invest into China because few competitors with you.
Okay.
I hope he raised money with that.
Yeah, very positive thinking.
And I think another thing is, in the past as a venture capital, we mainly focus on the U.S. Investors. Maybe largely about 80% of our LPs are from the U.S. But now we are facing challenge, so we began to explore more potential LPs from other countries, including Asia, Middle East, and Europe. So maybe this is also a good news for us to expose Chinese market or Chinese insight to more global investors. Because in the past, we even don't have time to talk with them.
So, to summarize what I heard, I think Robert Schiller might be right. We haven't seen a real recession in China. We actually don't know how to react. Even the most sophisticated investors are still in the kind of situation. So if we look at in longer term for the technology part, because I know many of the audience here today, they are thinking about to become entrepreneurs, to start up something in the future. So what are the big trends you think people can look at in technology, in healthcare, some specific areas you think people can still look at in China?
I may mention two. Hardcore technology, if you have really have the patent or talent on this. And another one is the green energy.
Can you give us some examples of hardcore technology?
Chips.
Chips, okay.
Or AI,
Okay.
like AI in agriculture or AI in biotech.
Okay. Yeah. That's good news for some technology guys. Darren, you mentioned some.
My area is probably too narrow for many of the audience members. We do biotech, and what we invest in are mainly those companies that truly have innovative technologies that can be tested across the Pacific. For example, drugs, right? We need the companies to have pipeline products that go through true multinational, multi-center clinical trials. They need to withstand very high standard examinations of their products. And we do see, in the biotech field, we do see many scientists, researchers, entrepreneurs. They have products or technologies at or even breaking the envelope of the most advanced technology around the globe. And these are the technologies that will have survived next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And these are the things that we are looking for after.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, I just share some trends before. There are three trends. In particular for us, like title insurance, where basically we have two focused, even for the both for the direct investment and also indirect, like we invest in the GPs. One is healthcare, definitely. This is our major area. But we're looking at the healthcare is more from an ecosystem perspective. So because we see there are a lot of opportunities for the payment innovation, because currently the China government definitely have some pressure on the payment. But for any innovation, they need to have some payment to support that. So we have seen a lot of opportunities to how to innovate the kind of commercial payment system to support the innovation in the healthcare. And also, we also see a lot of opportunities to how to manage the health. Like Sally said, people were living in a very non-life. When you live in the life, it's more about health management. This is also the key area for insurance company because the insurance company want to make money, they need to control the cost. How to control the cost, we need to know people's data and intervene in their kind of daily activities and improve their kind of daily health. So in that perspective, we see many opportunities in the healthcare area. Another area, we think for us, either we do the investment or do the startup, we need to stay right with the trends. So another big trend in the last 30 years is definitely the carbon neutral technology. Electric cars, those are a very huge market and a very firm trend going forward. So we spend a lot of time to do the research and to do the asset allocation on the carbon neutral technology sectors. There are so many opportunities there. And also China definitely have an advantage in that perspective. So for example, right now the solar system, over like 80%, if I remember correct, is coming from China. This is a China advantage. So we will see a lot of opportunities going forward. That's from our perspective.
Thank you. Shirley, do you want to say something?
I think I said my piece.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think in the interest of time, maybe we open up for some questions from our audience, both in Beijing and online. Okay. So anyone who want to ask them questions?
Hi, thank you so much for the very interesting discussions. My name is Michael. I'm actually currently a high school student. My question, I have two really quick questions. One question is that, obviously we've mentioned, we've touched upon inflation and how businesses are going to respond to future investments and the future outlook of the Chinese economy. But at the same time, are you worried about, obviously there are trade cycles, but are you worried about another recession quite soon? And if that recession is kind of like demand side caused from household consumption.
You mean demands drop?
Yeah.
From household consumption. So basically that's definition of recession. Thank you for the question.
When you say you're a high school student, we all pay extra attention.
That's true. We all see hope.
It's great, high school students are worried about global economy. You represented the true trend.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to start? Shirley.
Give the tough questions to
the more
Shirley.
optimistic one. Anyway, I think if I were in high school, I would just go enjoy myself. The world still turns, until we pollute it further, right? If the carbon neutrality goals can be reached with all these new EV cars, I've invested in hydrogen, motors, which are used in hydrogen cars, which is quite cutting edge. But high risk because they're so expensive. So I think near term, because as I said, Sam and I, are relatively more old timers than most of the audience. In fact, we also share a commonality in that we both have two kids who, her daughters actually are supposed to be online listening to, a distinguished mother speaking tonight.
One high school student.
My kids both graduate from Yale, one from SOM, one from Yale College.
We
so
should
that's
hear
why
more about
I
that
was
later.
willing to share my perspective, as someone who has gone through quite a few cycles, I would say, because I started out as a corporate investor. I used to manage a few $1 billion for Verizon Investment Corp, the largest U.S. corporate pension fund, and I was a global investor, mostly in secondary markets. But through that, I gained really a global perspective on, how economic and political, trends or divide can impact or disrupt a economy and make you a lot of money or lose a lot of money. For instance, in 1994, there's financial crisis in a smaller scale, and I was invested in Thailand. And I got a call from Barton Biggs, who was running Morgan Stanley as a management company, and said, Shirley, I think you should get out because we foresee or forecast a currency crisis. The Thai baht might collapse. I took his piece of advice, did some research, went to my investment committee. I sold my Thai stocks just in time. So it was pretty scary because I could have lost a lot of money. And then a few years later, I joined Wall Street, JP Morgan, in order to come back, like Jim said, come back to Asia. And I came back to Hong Kong with JP Morgan, left the buy side to become a banker. And in 1997, JP Morgan, for the first time in its corporate history, fired 100 people in its Hong Kong office. And that particular day, I was pitching for the deal in Sinuk's office. And they fired our China rep. So I thought, my career was dead. And because my head could be, the chalking ball, could be chalked off the next day. So I think in a career, when you grow older, as a high school student, as I said, there are going to be so many ups and downs, right? Regardless what name school, or Ivy you're going to attend. It's much better to be prepared, right? In fact, to experience some down cycles will be very helpful to building a positive psychology, or just to build up the psychology, that to help you deal with all the adversities. Again, on this point, Sally actually is a better life coach than me, but I'm just speaking from my experience. So again, going back to you, I would say I would pay attention and trying to learn if you want to be a investor or entrepreneur. But in the meantime, don't worry, just be happy. Don't play.
Yeah. Thank you. Very good suggestion, Shirley.
It's really good to see young people like you to come to this panel. So I think it's really encouraging. I guess Yale or this group of people attract young people like you who are very curious, right? Who has broad range of knowledge and who is also very confident. So congratulations. I think you're on the right track to be the future leader of something. That's great. But none of us, I guess, I'm not trained as economists. So I think the true economists may not be able to predict exactly when the recession is happening. We've been reading, every investment bank keeps saying recession is coming, recession is coming. You can be right when you're lucky, but you can never predict. So, and also I think, what you're talking about may be more U.S. side. There has been anticipation there may be a recession coming. I think the federal government and the regulators are trying to have measures to help ease the downside. I think what we don't want to see is regulator here, we don't want man-made recession, so obviously we want to properly use the policy tools to help ease that, if you have inflation coupled with unemployment and all these challenges, that's not a good thing to see. But as Shirley just mentioned, we have been experienced quite some stuff in our short life. And sometimes it's really luck more than your knowledge or prediction. For example, I left Lehman Brothers after serving there for almost 10 years in 2006. When I lived in I lived in Silicon Valley, I had all my IRA in Lehman stock.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when our family decided to move back to China. So I sold all my Lehman stock at 85.
Wow.
I sold my house in Menlo Park. and then we all moved back, and I joined the great firm of J.P. Morgan when Jamie Dimon just joined. And I had no expectations what was going to happen in the next few years to the housing market in the US or to Lehman Brothers or to many of my old friends in Silicon Valley, right? So was I a visionary, right? Was I an economist? I just predicted, right? Maybe I should be becoming one. Yeah. So not everything is under our control, but if you find your passion and you're interested, you do something you enjoy, at least, you feel good about yourself, right? So coming back to positive psychology, I was telling my daughters, one is a high school student graduating in a couple of months. The other one is freshman at Yale. A younger one will join her. So like Shirley, I have two daughters are connected to the Yale family. I told them after these 2 years, saying that the killer skills in the future is one, your immunity.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if you're strong, you have really good immunity, COVID doesn't matter, right? So this is something you can work on. You have control. You exercise, you eat well, you rest well, right? You can have control, you can work on it, and that's critical. And two is really adaptability. The world definitely will change. We don't know where it will change to. Build your adaptability, and that can also be trained by having empathy, understanding other people,
Right.
having the ability to see things from different perspectives, and this world really needs that now particularly, and really have the ability to stay curious, stay hungry, not physically hungry, to be able to learn things, to learn new things. And when you have setbacks, have failure, you can get up faster. And that's the ability you can learn. So if you build these muscle memories when you're young, as high school kids, the future is bright for you. And a lot more people will follow, and you'll be ahead. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much. Anything else to add? So I want to correct one thing for Sally. So all the recessions are man-made. Because animals, they don't have recession. And probably another thing is, just remind me, it's so hard to predict anything. Like Charlie Munger said, if you really want to have some opinion, you can only have some opinion unless you have a very strong counter-argument. So otherwise, you don't have that opinion. So I guess that's, you draw yourself as a high schooler. I think that's probably more interesting than predicting the recession around us. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, question there.
Thank you very much. Actually, I brought another high schooler here, which is my daughter. And the reason is that I want to ask one question, which is a little bit too positive. But I wanted to say I see a lot of hope from the next generation, like these kids. So I was hoping among our daughters and sons, is there anything that as MBAs or someone who has economic background that we can do for them? Because we did a very detailed research for Ukraine war and see what are some good elements that we can keep still for the world. And what we can see is actually kind of, so that lady from Ukraine, from the Russian banker, right, the bank side, actually saved their lives. So is there anything that as economists or someone who work in this area that we can do for the next generation, maybe we can help them to save their future or to make their future a little better? That's my question. Or for Yale's, Yale graduates or alumni, what will be your specific suggestion that you can give us as mother or father to help the next generation for a brighter future?
Okay, I try to rephrase your question. So what can we tell our daughters and sons how can we make the world better? Is that your question? Or?
The question actually bases on, I think, at this point, economies, unlike the history, we can do something, probably to make the world a little bit better, or for the basics is brighter than before.
I still don't know whether I understand very clearly. Can you maybe say that in Chinese? I can. that might be easier.
很简单，就是前一阵，因为我和那个唐明老师也认识，我们都是欧美同学会的，然后大家就在讨论说，现在这个情况这么不好，有什么好的地方吗？然后我们就发现，实际上真正还算比较稳定，国家与国家之间还可以继续沟通和交流的是 trading。If you look into the trading numbers, it's not too bad at this point. To China, to Ukraine, to Russia, it's not too bad. For US even, right? So, 我们在想，在以前的 history 里边，就是经济只是基础，然后政治是上层建筑。我感觉在慢慢变化，就是说，在这个慢慢游离的去中心化的社会里面，可能经济学家或者是我们在 MBA 的这个 area， 我们作为 people to people 的民间外交方面，可能做的工作会比正常的这个公共外交或者是正常的国家与国家之间的 boundary 要好一些。我们会有 Jim Rogers 这样的人，我们会有我们会有我们的下一代，我们可能从民间的角度可以做更多的工作，就像他们有 curiosity。
所以问题是我们怎么通过贸易和经济？
我们 what can we do？ 就是
我们能做些什么 ？OK，
我们作为爸爸妈妈，我们能做些什么？
明白，对。
是我们作为民
So what can we do as
民间的，不是
as a non-government people to contribute to the globalization, maybe, right?
Maybe I can help her take the question a bit further.
Well,
对，我们先等大家回答一下这个问题 ，OK？ 好，然后
Shirley raised her hand.
Shirley, please go ahead.
I think I would just teach my child to be kind, to be open-minded, to be, to pick up a skill where, he or she can feed himself or herself. I think that itself is already a contribution to the human community.
I think as overseas students, as most of us here today have the experience working or studying in the overseas countries, I think as us, we may have the one more responsibility that to tell more people the truth in our minds to the people in China, and because most of the Chinese people, they never been in the overseas country. And also for the young kids, I hope them they have the independent thinking, not only to be open-minded, but the most important thing is you should have your own mind. You should think by yourself. Not only to listen to your parents or listen to us or listen to the radio or something else. So this is I think it's a very important point. If you have your own minds, you will be not closed. You will be listening to others. Then they will be very important for the people that are non-political people like us, that we have the willingness to talk with others.
Yeah, I actually wrote a letter to my daughters January 1st, this year. I forgot what I wrote, so I was looking for it. So I did write to them because the younger one is turning 18 this year as well. So it's my gift to them, 成人 gift. So the first one I said is 学会放下，有舍才有得。Because we are in a time you have to give up something, but sometimes when you give up something, that's only when you give up something, you gain something. So 就是说要学会放下，即使 at a young age. And the second one I wrote is live the moment. 活在当下，专注眼前。Because our generation have been too busy achieving our goals, our career, and all this, commonly viewed success. But younger generation, if they can learn to live the moment, enjoy the moment, there's always something beautiful in simple life. So if each of the moment and life could be beautiful. And then third one is actually 珍惜关系，感恩缘分. Value the relationship you have and the encounters you have with people, and all this will, bring something good. Like, by coming to this session, this young guy, maybe he'll end up at Yale someday. So it's really value all the moment your interactions with people come to your life, whether or not the relationship is long or short, but that have to have some impact in your life, and value that, and be grateful of the great things that happen to you, because that could just be luck, like me leaving Lehman at the right time. And the last one is, the next one is understanding different perspectives and embrace different views. 理解不同视角，包容不同理念. Because this time probably is really in the history of our past few decades that we're seeing different opinions within different countries. It's actually not just China. We're here, we think, oh, this is happening. But if you look at what's happening in Europe, each of the countries in Europe, what's happening in the US, it's very divided. And a lot of historical issues all accumulated to this point. More than ever, we need to have everyone understanding each other, even at each of the homes, right? In the US, when there's the Trump, time, and their husband and wife don't talk to each other, right? And here we have all these WeChat groups, right? Every point you have divided view, right? So it's not just happening to us, it's happening everywhere. So we do need to understand from different perspectives why there's a reason everyone thinks the way they do, but understand why they understand that way. So respect, have basic trust and respect of other people. And last one is really be yourself, and keep that integrity and authenticity. 做自己，保持真实真诚. I think the last thing we want is our kids lose that basic honesty and integrity, and growing up learning to lie and just say things others want them to say or expect them to say. I think if our generation fought hard to find our own voice, and we're hoping our children will be better. I mean, they are living in a better environment materialistically, but we really hope they keep all the gains from our generation and be better person. And if each one of us, as Shirley said, we can live well, be a kind person, I think the world will be better, and we all can contribute to that.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you.
See, I wrote it, but I forgot.
Thank you. I really can find more wisdom on Sally's公众号, so that's very happy. Okay, this one? Okay, last question, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so first I want to express my gratitude for what you talked about, and second, may I ask in Chinese so that I can express myself well?
Okay, go ahead. I will translate, so don't worry.
No, I'm a freshman. Yeah.
Okay.
所以我的第一个问题就是当我进入了大学这个阶段，特别是在疫情以来，就是在今年年初以来，我们经历了这么多的事情，然后我发现这些事情正在摧毁我12年教育所教给我的那些世界观。然后与此同时，就是怎么说呢？就是正在发生的这些事情。当我在比如说微博上所看见到的这些媒体言论statements from the media and 就是我从外网，比如说从 Twitter 或者是 Facebook， 当他们对我的这个思维造成了冲击的时候，我要去如何圆融的去把它们融入到我的思想里面，就是我要去知道 what is objective and 什么是这个，比如说 the party 让我们知道的something.
Okay, I will have to translate. I will have to translate.
Okay, so and the second question is that.
先到这儿，先这个翻译。Okay, I will translate for I will. 谢谢，你先坐下，我来接着翻译。
没有，他的问题是什么？
我听到这个问题了。So I'm going to translate. So when you, as a college student, freshman, you see what happened in the past 12 years. Sorry, past several months. That destroyed your belief in the 12 years you had in school.
Actually, where did you have your education? That's a relevant question before answering.
Okay, yeah.
In China.
原来就是你这12 years, where did you?
原来其实这个观点不是我在哪儿给我的，而是说这个。
Yeah, but you grew up in China. You grew up in China.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And you going to college where?
清华 University.
Okay. Yeah, that's relevant. That's relevant because where you're from is relevant to how you see things.
Yeah.
Right.
So you see different things and on different medias, and you don't know what to believe and what other people try to make you believe. And how do you reconcile this with yourself? I think it's back to Sally's question, more about mental health, which is it's very important question, right? So I don't know who wants to start first.
Shirley is more experienced.
Okay, Shirley. Okay, everyone is looking at you, Shirley.
Yeah, Shirley has two
I
adults.
was trying to avoid this kind of questions tonight. I think it's a really tough one to answer right now, sitting where I am. I have complete empathy from with the person who's asking this because I think most of us probably need a lot of counseling at this stage. With what's been going on. I think I don't know what he's trying to get at, right? I guess you do have options. If you're an investor, right, like us, capital always, seek safe haven, so to speak. So that's why all the hedge fund guys are gone. But the buy side people are still, wait and see how bad that can get, because it's very costly to sell it. For us, I think if we invest along the lines, the government wants us to support the AI, support the robotics, to help build up China's, tech power. Temporarily, we are fine, but we do want to seek, legal protection when your money are invested. It doesn't matter whose money, is it from your own pocket or your LPs. So there are some questions, that we have to deal with, regardless how you feel psychologically. So I think one thing that's helpful is maybe it's a learning process, right? For a lot of us who grew up in a rather, prosperous economic cycle, again, we'll go back to the cycle thing, then I think that we have not been prepared for what's happening now. We could head into, it's the People's Daily who actually said the Chinese Social Academy forecasted 6.8% GDP growth in China. And it really got poo-pooed in WeChat circles. But then, in the meantime, our WeChats get deleted here from Shanghai every, other hour. And so you need to, I think you need to have a very balanced view of what's going on. And then, as I said, keep an open mind. And I do think that everyone has an option. I think everybody around, here, especially our panelists, including myself, we all love this country. I was born here, went to States early, got very lucky, worked on Wall Street, made a lot of money, and came back here, and my kids, went to the best schools, got the best education. I consider myself very lucky. I've been very thankful. I really appreciate the opportunity I got. But in the meantime, since two of the youngsters, high schoolers or their mother asked the question, I'm too worried about my kids. I think that they are doing great in the US, but I would have wanted them to have the opportunity our generation had. I was talking to a friend who was running one of the biggest American tech companies in China, and he's had a great run for 20 years. So he was in quarantine, so I asked him, I said, how's it going with the family since you just came back? A lot of people are trying to leave. So he said, it's all, because he's in the chip production, one of the largest chip companies. I don't want to name it. So he said the Chinese government has been treating him very well. But then we ended on a note that he worries about his kids that not getting the opportunity that we got. So I said to him, I said, you know what, sometimes maybe we just need to adjust our expectations. Just like our younger generation need to adjust their expectations. Appreciate what you have now, and then adjust your goals. If you don't like what's happening, get out. If you think you can stay and still build a great life, with your family, and continue to do something that's meaningful, like we said on the healthcare side, on the environmental, protection side, maybe you still have a great opportunity to stay and just wait it out or fight it out. I think, there's no certain answer, there's no right and wrong, it's a matter of choice. And I do think most of us here have a choice. So thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
I'll just add a couple of words. Not just young people who get disillusioned, who get frustrated, and I think a lot of older people in their 30s, 40s, and they shout on the WeChat, and they fight even with each other. So it's not just, the young people get frustrated, and my advice is try to keep calm. And there are people who are in the same situation as you are. In my younger years, we acted out, but in this time of, or in this society, keep calm and observe the things that happen around you. And maybe talk to your parents, and they love you, and they have more experience than you. Get some advice, and it's just not young people there. And what Sally was saying was very true. There are some simple principles in life, especially in this turbulent time. Observe some simple truths, simple rules, and keep your integrity, keep your mental, curiosity, observe this society. That's the hope. Young people are the hope for this society.
Yeah, I think what you're experiencing is not just in China. I mean, if you look at US, if you look at how biased some media could be, I'm sure young kids in the US are also fighting the same kind of challenges. What do we believe? But I think fundamentally, if you believe every organization has its own perspective, because we're all different, right? You and I are different, you and that high school kid is different because you come from different culture, different family, different background. So seeing the world differently is natural, right? So don't assume whatever you see is the truth or is the whole truth. What is education? It's actually training us to explore, give us tools to explore the truth, because we don't know the truth. It's like Yale's motto, right? We are pursuing truth, because we can't assume what we're told is truth. So this is global concept, right? Assume whatever you see is not the truth. So what is the truth? That's your job to see, right? So I think this is global for children, for young people globally. We're all facing similar challenges, different scale, different scope. So it's not unusual. It's not just to Chinese this time of life, but it globally is a cycle, right? So keep your independent view and curiosity and explore the truth. And also, who is to define the truth at the end of the day, right? It's a path. It's a path. We are on the path to pursue the truth. We may never find the truth, but just being on that path, I think, keep you going. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to say one word to you, that is welcome to the real world. If you thought that your 12 years belief has been destroyed because you lived in the fake world in the past 12 years. In the past 12 years, teachers or your parents will tell you everything is true or false. In the real world, there is no truth or false. So nobody can figure you out. You have to find your way by yourself.
I don't have any other things to add beyond like Sally or Shirley said. I'll ask Sally to share that letter to me. I want to share with my kids. But the one thing I would say, like, if we look back into the history, in the last 70 years, there's a low war we are experienced. And in the last 40 years, we experienced the most successful economic growth in the history. So our generation, our luckiest generation in Chinese history. But this is not normal. This is abnormal. If you go back to Chinese history, such kind of peaceful and prosperous growth is not normal. So we need to back to our normal. Like there's some turbulence, there's some uncertainties. We need to face that. And I think I just suggest you just follow Sally's principles to face that uncertainties, to make the right choice. But you need to say, this is our lucky life, our lucky time maybe are going to end. So this is the reality.
If you live long enough, you will experience that, right? So we're still here. If we're lucky, we're still here.
So some final word from me. I think you realize you are not alone, right? People here are all suffering from this.
Get frustrated.
Yeah, everyone is suffering from that. So don't feel strange. Actually feel lucky, because I didn't realize what you realized until I went to Yale. I found something that I truly believed that wasn't true in history class. So in many other discussions in law school. So feel normal about that, because that's the start of growing up.
Yeah.
Maybe one practical tip, right? If you're really feeling bad, I did take some positive psychology courses at Professor Peng's class at Tsinghua 3 years ago. Perfect timing to prepare me for COVID.
Yeah.
I didn't plan, but I think one really easy to exercise is 3 good things every day. So every day before you go to bed, think about at least three good things that happened to you today. If you want to, it's also good to write it down.
Yeah, like attending a session here today,
because each of us will have 5 good things today, right? So write it down every day. If you do that for maybe 3 weeks consecutively, like quarantine, 21 days, it may become part of your subconsciousness, and you start to think positively, right? So if before you go to bed every day, you think of 3 great things, and then you have good dreams. You'll be fresh the next day. And then write down before the next day 3 good things. I'm sure you can find 3 good things, right? Or longer. But either way, have a notebook, write down, and then you keep writing it. And then you start thinking more things. You start to take in more positive. Like those news, I think about, there's AI pushed. If you don't read the negative ones, you don't want to read, it doesn't come to you anymore, right? You do have some control on what information you take. So at least get through every day in a tough time, practice 3 good things every day. So at least that's a good thing coming out of today, right?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think it's to keep this confusion period as long as possible. Don't to figure it out so quickly, because life should be confused. Confused will keep thinking.
Keep you awake and alive and struggle to be a better self.
So that's normal, because I can give you a very strong proof on that. If you look at the motto of Yale, it was hope, which is light, and the truth. So basically those 2 things, keep that in mind. Always pursue the truth. even the world is filled with lies, and always think about hope, even in the darkest time. So that's why it has truth and light. And by the way, Harvard only have truth. Thank you.